Hello to one and all. Welcome to the XP Billionaires podcast. This is Rafe, Sky, and Mel. We're here to give you the fun, the fury, and the excitement of RPG conversation. I really hope it is all of those things, because otherwise I'm just going to sound like a fool here.
I'm here. I'm sure at some point there will be rage.
I'm hoping on it. I'm going to put some money down on there being a bit of rage.
All right, you heard it here. We're going to put down an undisclosed amount on whether or not there's going to be rage on this episode. I'm going to play the other side and say none. I'm going to say there won't be any rage, but I don't know. Let's see who's right and who's wrong. All right, let's say hello to everybody. Sky, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm pretty good. And now determined to get angry about something. Just to mess with you.
Oh, you're lucky that you just got me a really awesome birthday present. Otherwise, I could be upset with you right now, but I can't be because you did such an amazing job. So.
And now I feel ashamed.
It's all good. It's all good. If you guys want to see what Sky got me for my birthday, which was actually an early birthday present, it's coming up in a few days, but it is on my Instagram. Check it out, Ray Fegram, and you guys can see what it is. I'm super excited. I can't wait to get started on it. Mel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I've been going through some of my my Steam library and looking at all these games that I meant to play or ones I meant to finish. So I've been in a little bit of a this is not brand new, but still going through some of these older games. I'm just like, why did I never finish that?
The short answer to that is the same as my answer a lot of the time. It's something else just came along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking, I just picked up Octopath Traveler again because I was like, why did I stop? And it was like, I'm like 3/4 through the game, and I was enjoying it. And you're right, it is something else came along at the time. So I haven't even finished Pokemon. Anyways, I gotta finish stuff. I gotta wrap it up.
You can do it. I believe in you.
Yes, finishing stuff is good. It is.
It's just this, I don't know, there's also just this ongoing problem in gaming where, all these games are, 100 hours, and I'm just like, I don't know. That's so much time.
That certainly does become a problem, and you just can't do anything about that. Developers just need to make more concise, shorter games, and that would be great if they did. Anywho, that is a whole topic for another day. So yeah, we should get started with what we want to talk about today. But before we do, I do want to bring up a conversation I had with one of our listeners recently. This is related to our episode from last week related to LGBTQ couples. So someone by the name of, an Instagram handle of Colin Probably came to me on chats and pointed out a huge oversight on my part related to that episode. When I was talking about the relationship of Parvati and Junlei from the Outer Worlds, one of the things I neglected to mention is that while the romance is incredibly adorable and the level of puppy love that Parvati feels is amazing, we also should have pointed out that Parvati is asexual, which honestly is actually a really huge deal, especially when we're trying to talk about inclusion in games. So even now at this moment, I can only think of one other asexual character in any form of media, and it came from BoJack Horseman, believe it or not. So it is a huge thing. So I just wanted to say that this is definitely an oversight on my part. There was no intent to exclude ace people in any way. So I do want to apologize for not bringing that up. And I also do want to thank Colin again for bringing this to my attention and for also providing some really valuable feedback for the show, some of which I think you guys are going to notice today when we get to our end point. So definitely stay tuned all the way to the end for that, because I don't know, you guys might hear a couple of new things. So
Ooh.
Ace people are awesome.
Absolutely, they are.
Love you, ace people.
All right, with that out of the way, let's get started with this week's topic. So, the creativity of storytelling is honestly near endless. The ability to create a unique world with its own people, politics, society, just one of those things that really fascinates me. And there are times, however, when a writer will draw upon references from history, literature, other sources that already exist in the world in order to augment their own. This is something we at the XP Billionaires have dubbed scholarly references. So this week, I want to discuss some games that have done this in their storytelling and world building, along with what success there is in creating using this particular method. So, in order for us to really do that, the first thing is to identify some games that include these scholarly references. I'll start off just to give us just a starting point, of course. One of the games I thought about with this is one I hadn't thought about in a long time, but Eternal Sonata. So the story itself is the depiction of a dream had by the composer Frédéric Chopin in his final hours of life. As the story in his mind progresses, the game actually also cuts to scenes of the real world with Chopin in his bed, the others around him. And at points, he was also even a playable character, which was really interesting. But one of the things I really like about the idea of this game, that it's trying to show us what the inside of a creative, brilliant mind can look like. And the fact that the game was very vibrant and colorful, I don't know, it just really makes you think, like, was that how he really saw the world? And when you're a creative mind, is that just something that you tend to see more? It's like, so I know that, some people say they can see the music if they do. Like, was all that color, all that beauty, was that the music he was seeing?
Yeah, I don't know if Chopin actually had synesthesia. I cannot say that word.
Synesthesia.
Thank you.
Just poke me anytime you want to say it. I'll just be like, synesthesia.
Oh, that screws up my tongue. But even if that's just representation of how he imagines the world, it's quite inspiring and beautiful and colorful, and like everything related to music, like characters had names that are from music theory. Yeah, I mean, I never finished it, but it had the same sort of colorfulness of, say, well, like the Atelier games. That vivid, beautiful color palette. I really should give this one a try again.
Yeah, I love games that like embrace music and visuals. Like, I think for so many of us, like listening to music has this ability to make us imagine and be taken somewhere else, and to be able to see that world expressed is like always really beautiful. And when games really embrace that music as like the heart of their stuff, it's like, how can it not be this beautiful, vibrant thing? Because music can just make you feel so much.
Mel, we've said it before, we'll say it again, just for that alone. Art and Elico. Play those games.
All right. Wish list. My birthday's too far away. I'll have to buy it for myself.
No, they're older titles, but worst case, we've got access to them. You'll be able to play them at some point. All right, Sky, what is a good game that you think has these scholarly references?
Okay, I'm going to be slightly predictable with my answer here and go with Shadow Hearts. I mean, the series as a whole has all these real world settings, albeit with that Lovecraftian nightmare twist that we all love, but actually has playable versions of historical characters in most of the games. Lord Dunsany, Matahari, Anastasia Romanoff. And if you don't remember two of those people being in Shadow Hearts, look up what other names Lord Dunsany and Matahari had. Just saying. And also the recurring NPC Roger Bacon, who is in all the games, is also a historical figure. They did a lot of research. In fact, when they made the first game in the series, Kodelka, which takes place in in a fictional but very realistic Welsh monastery, the team actually traveled to Wales to research and so that they could make it feel, realistic. And they really did a good job. It is actually one of the prettier games on the PS1, and the setting is really well done. Like you can see too, locations that I am more familiar with, I have noticed seemed really realistic. Like Montmartre in France, Paris, France, is one example. It felt really familiar to me. I went to Paris for a time as a teenager, so when I saw the scenes in game, I felt, oh, that feels so spot on. Might not be entirely 100% accurate, but they really captured the feel really well.
Yeah, Shadow Hearts did a really good job of taking that whole concept and putting it just to a whole nother level. Yeah, no, that definitely qualifies in this case. I think you summed it up quite nicely. All right. So, Mel, what reference, or well, what obvious reference do I think I'm going to get from you?
I I know. I went into the obvious thing, but how can we not talk about Persona? We got to talk about it. I'm gonna stop talking about it eventually, one day. But obviously, Persona is just chocked full of references to things. Obviously, Jungian psychology with the idea of the mask and your personas, all of the personas' characters like Zoro and Captain Kidd, obviously, are all based on books or characters in various stories. And you even get references like in the Velvet Room that the Velvet Room assistants are Elizabeth and Lavenza in 4 and 5 respectively, which is it was just Frankenstein's wife's name. So you get all of these little bits peppered in.
A quick revision: 3 and 5.
3 and 5, thank you.
Yeah.
Who's in 4? 4 is
Margaret.
Margaret. You're right, and Theo.
Yes, Theo in P3P. Yeah.
There you go. Persona 3 and 5. But I think once I started kind of reading more about them, I think the one that got me the most was Arsène. I mean, Arsène, tons of books written about like the kind of the original gentleman thief, right? Written by Leblanc, which of course is where you live. There's even a thing where Arsène was one of his like famous moves was sending a calling card before he committed the crime to put people on edge, which is like a fundamental part of how you play Persona 5. And I think it's so cool that they managed to like combine that into the actual gameplay. They're so good at that.
Yeah, they really managed to fuse all these characters and stories and societal phenomenons into a game so seamlessly. It's one of the reasons why I don't get mad at them for taking lots of time to develop games.
Exactly. Like the amount of like the I think when you do it well, it's not going to um pull away from the story if you don't know the reference. And I think Persona does that so well. That if you get the reference, you're like, that's really cool. And if you don't, either you don't need to, or the game gives you opportunities like reading books from the library to learn more. So I think it does a really good job of balancing those like cultural and literary references.
Oh yeah, and even often the personas are relevant to the characters' personalities, or like they've done all this work tying things together. And it's never more obvious than in Royal when they where they add a third persona, and it's yet another reference, but it's related to the previous references, and it's just so seamless. It's awesome stuff.
They're really, really masters of it. So again, you're not going to be surprised that I had to bring up Persona, but like we can't talk about cool literary references and not talk about Persona.
And if you hadn't, I would have.
I beat you to it. Get angry.
Rawr!
I don't think that counts. Shoot.
All right. So that gives us a good kind of base on to where to start with, gives you an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about games with scholarly references. So, knowing all of these now, I find myself curious on whether or not, just a unique world all in its own is, say, a more creative approach, or if putting one with the scholarly references is more creative in that regard. I I don't know. Like I thought about it, and I will still probably lean to saying that the unique world is a little bit more creative in my mind. The only reason I say that is that with your own world, there's no limits. Your vision can go the distance that you want it to go. You can craft a world with different social structures, political ideologies, history. Like if you've really built that, the world is truly your own, and it's really hard to take that away. And I feel like taking some of these extra references can put a bit of constraint on your overall vision.
It's a sort of shorthand. You're never going to entirely get a completely unique world in most cases, because we're all, every writer is influenced by something. Those influences find their way into people's work, sometimes without them even knowing. But it also makes highly effective shorthand if done right. And you can do a lot more without saying as much.
Yeah, I think like we're learning too a lot with like the Black Lives Matter work and stuff too, how much we don't even realize sometimes like those cultural works that are influencing what we create. And that's why, again, representation is so important in all media, right? Because like a lot of the references that we see are references to, European creators or the Bible or things that are like very traditional. And I think traditionally white as well. And like, that's I think an opportunity where some games can explore space from other creators, from like creators of color. So we should see more, I guess. Encourage me to learn.
Yes, honestly, like, and frankly, it just makes the medium more interesting, because like, I don't know about you guys, but I look at games with a heavily medieval aesthetic, or like that lean really heavily on, say, Norse mythology or Greek mythology, which have been mined to death, and I just like, put me to sleep. Like, give me something else.
Yeah, I
We've
just
been
remember
here
seeing this post from somebody once being like, "Well, women can't be main characters because that's not how things were in Zelda times." Like we've created this fictional account of the world to justify our own prejudices, and that's not okay.
Yeah, it's, you can have dragons and no, but no black people. Black people would be unrealistic. Come on, like,
Such a ridiculous argument to me. It just makes me want to pull my hair out.
yeah.
Yeah, that being said, Sky, like which one do you think is more creative?
It can go either way. It depends how the elements are used too. Like if it's just lazily built in, like, say, for example, a medieval world, and they've just added a few dragons and giants or something, it's just like, it's just lazy. But if the game doesn't lean on the same five references that most games in a genre lean on, then it can add this lovely added depth and cultural resonance, and we can nerd out by researching it. Like, and you can use these elements in super creative ways. Like, the creators of Archnelico mined several different languages to create hymnos, something that almost never sounds like a language that any of us have heard of, but it's actually got elements of like Sanskrit and French and some other languages in it. I mean, it's just, it adds to the creativity as opposed to taking away from it. So I can go either way.
I like that they tried to use scholarly reference there in terms of language. Like I didn't even think of that to be considered a scholarly reference in that regard until you just pointed it out. So that's yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't game related specifically, but if you ever want to learn like about the music in the movie Avatar, like with the blue people, the way that they tried to go about making that music is super interesting. And what we end up with is like traditional Hollywood score, because it turns out when you try to make an alien sounding language or like music, it doesn't sound quite right to our ears. So it's very interesting stuff about like how that plays a part.
Yeah. By basing the language of hymnos on languages that, exist in human cultures, but throwing in all these influences to make it sound like something completely different, yet still sounds like human language. It works very, very well. Sometimes you don't even see those references working in the background in some works, but when you do find out, it just makes it all the more fascinating.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Mel, what are your thoughts?
So I think Sky makes some really good points. I think it can go either way, right? I think often it's a fine line to walk, right? You want it to be interesting enough that people who are looking for more information feel rewarded and more engaged, like an Easter egg. But you don't want it to be so obscure or so hard to understand that people don't understand what you're getting at, right? It is a short form to tell you what's happening in the world, and um, you kind of have to really know what your audience knows and how you want them to feel. Like making someone feel a little off by referencing something they don't know is fine if that's the feeling you want them to have. So I think it really obviously depends. I mean, my personal preference is I like to, scour Wikipedias after I'm done playing a game to learn a little bit more and get some clues. Like I love that like fun facts at the bottom. Um, but like
Yes.
overall, I don't think most games could do what Persona does. Like Persona is a bit heavy even for my taste. Like I love Persona, but it could maybe chill out a little bit.
Oh, I eat that stuff up. Like, I give me a nice complicated story that I can hook my grubby little claws into and learn everything possible that I can. Yummy.
Tasty.
I'll look into it on rare occasions myself, but like if there's just something bugging me about why I feel like I should recognize this reference, I'll kind of dig into it. But when I go into wikis for stuff like that, it's usually just looking up voice actors. Like that's my thing. I love doing that, but pulling out the other references, it I don't do that very often, I'll admit.
But that's where the tasty secrets live.
Yum yum.
Stop making me hungry.
You're the one who decided to not have dinner.
I'm having dinner after recording. Jeez. Oh, yeah. Some people just don't understand. The recording, the making sure you all listeners get entertained is much more important than my sustenance.
Oh, but your meat sack requires nutrients.
It'll get there. It'll get there. I've got a pretty big meat sack. It can go a little longer. All right, let's move on because this is degraded significantly. Wow. um, I guess the last thing. I mean, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about like what kind of scholarly references you'd like to see in an RPG in the future. Like, I honestly, I want to go the super geek route. I want to see more RPGs that have a strong pop culture referencing. I think of a game like Saturday Morning RPG. Like they did a really good job of that. We need more games like it. Something on a grander scale, however. Like let's see a world where the geeks have taken over the government. Our currency is pogs and like ancient artifacts are like mint in box action figures. Like let's yes. That's what I want to see. I'm purely ridiculous, purely geeky. I don't know why. I think it'd just be great. Sky, what would you want to see in an RPG?
I would much rather see I'd like to see some African influences, some Afrofuturism or alternative history. I touched on this a bit earlier, and Mel did as well, but the histories and legends and literatures of white people have been mined so hard, while others have been so ignored, and it makes this art form less interesting. It just does. Diversity just makes things richer.
No, you're not wrong there.
Yeah, and I gotta go in the same vein here, right? Like, we want to see more like Black, Indigenous, people of color telling their stories. The next game on my short list of games to play is Never Alone, which is a really cool story that's developed in partnership with some native storytellers in Alaska. And to like learn more of that culture and to experience it, I think is super interesting, and I've been wanting to play it for a long time. So there is really good stuff out there. Not enough of it, but I want to learn more.
Well, and you got to remember too that if we broaden the media we consume, even when we're writing science fiction and fantasy, we're gonna make richer, more interesting science fiction and fantasy because our influences will be more diverse. So even if you're not interested in doing like historical work, it can still make your gaming experiences that much more rich.
Yeah, I think it expands too to like LGBT communities as well, like the cultural shorthands of like the straight relationship, um, are just the only thing we see in a lot of games. That's one of the reasons, going back to the beginning of the episode, that Outer Worlds did such a great job talking about an ace lesbian character.
An ace lesbian woman of color, no less. Like,
oh, I missed one. I'm like, she's such a good character. I'm like, I gotta get all the things.
Yeah, like people like Parvati should not be a rare phenomenon. Multiply marginalized people exist. Let's see them.
Yep, bring it on. Absolutely. All right. I think that's going to wrap it up for this week. So I want to know what you guys think about scholarly references, what you'd like to see more in your gaming. I think that would be awesome. There's going to be a bunch of ways for you to do that, to talk to us about it. Our newest one is through our group email. So if you have anything you want to talk about regarding the show, if you want to make suggestions for topics, if there's anything you want to talk to us about, good, bad, preferably polite, please do so at xpbillionaires@gmail.com. The email address will be in all the description boxes wherever you should be able to find the podcast. So please definitely reach out to us. Don't be afraid. We had Colin, who was more than happy to talk to us about what we overlooked in the Outer Worlds. I'm overly thankful that he was able to do that. So I want to make sure that everybody has a better opportunity to do so. So by all means, hit us up there. Or if you do want to talk to us individually, you can do that through our social media. You can find me on Twitter at BillionairesXP, or you can find me on Instagram at Rafe Thegrim. Sky, where can everyone find you?
I'm at SkyKnightXP on Twitter and SkyKnight.xp on Instagram.
And Mel, where can everyone find you?
I'm on Instagram at Feminist Gamer and Twitter at Feminist Gamer 3. I also run a D&D game on Twitch every Wednesday, so you can check that out. And I'm a regular writer on Geek Girl Authority, so yeah, find my stuff.
Awesome. Looking forward to seeing some of that new stuff, the Geek Girl Authority stuff. So, and don't forget to check out our website for quickfire reviews, written features. We just added a whole bunch of those onto the website, so definitely check those out. That's xpbillionaires.ca. And don't forget our monthly newsletter, which we post on our coffee page every month, coffee.com/xpbillionaires. If you feel like leaving a donation while you're at it, by all means, please do so. And if not, just spread the word of what we do here, pass the website along to your friends, and let's make a community out of this. I'm really been enjoying myself. So all right, that's going to be it for us this week. And remember, there's always going to be another story to tell as long as we keep gaming. We'll see you next week, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.